So the two big news stories this morning, they are about breakthroughs in quantum computing. Alex, can you start by telling us more about this news and what it means for the cryptocurrency community?
Yeah, absolutely. I think so. There's a couple of notable pieces. First off, first thing that was notable was Google, right? So Google, and not just Google, right, but a member of the Ethereum Foundation, actually Justin Drake, who leads the Ethereum Foundation, was a co-author, as well as Dan Bonet, who's a prominent Stanford professor. So I think that lends some credibility to, I think, what some have been saying about this problem for a while. So that's thing one. I think thing two, you already mentioned, it was a zero knowledge proof. They kind of described the circuit or the rough approach, and they did that explicitly because they believed that, hey, they didn't want a bad actor to use this. The third thing that I would say is the analysis that they did was very comprehensive, and I think I would encourage everyone to at least read the abstract or even skim the paper, because if you're in digital assets, because they covered quite a breadth of potential attack vectors that is not often discussed.
I wondered if you had anything to add on that. Like, are you thinking 2029 is really what everybody should be aiming for, to be quantum, to be post-quantum?
I think when we look at from a cryptographic standpoint, the amount of value, or what we're counting on elliptic curve cryptography to do for us, it really is existential for blockchains. And so I think even if you have a small probability, which I don't think there's a small probability by the end of the decade. I think there's actually quite a large probability it could happen by the end of the decade. But whatever number you think that is, unless it's vanishingly astronomically small, we should do something.
Okay, so when you piece together kind of, the breakthroughs that were published today in both papers, if you were to give every blockchain a date by which you think it should be quantum resistant, what date would you give? And like what specific what specific things do you think need to be upgraded or kept safe?
It's a good question. I'll answer in two ways. One is that based off of the work we are currently doing at Oratomic, I believe it is quite plausible, although not guaranteed, that we will be able to achieve such a computer by the end of this decade. So in that sense, I think the timeline is apt. It is possible that the developments could be even faster than that. However, I think that quite likely it's not going to happen, for example, within the next year. There's progress that needs to be made. It is, to the best of my knowledge, I think we currently have the world's lead on how close we are to building one, and we are currently leading the development of building one. As we continue to make progress, we will be working with people like Alex and his team so that people are aware as we're continuing to advance.
Look, I'll answer the first one first. The date is as soon as they can be quantum resistant. I think it's actually less about like what's the deadline. It's more about how much can we do if we put a shovel in the ground right now. Probably not, very unlikely within a year. Plausible beyond that, effectively, and increasingly plausible as time goes on. I think these systems rely entirely on elliptic curve cryptography explicitly for the integrity of the identity, right? So it's like, if I can know your private key, Laura, I am you in blockchains. It ceases, like the meaning of a blockchain ceases to mean anything. We might as well all go back to where, use transacting through banks. So yeah, I think they need to start as soon as possible, and it kind of doesn't matter. I mean, different blockchains will take longer or shorter, but I think everyone needs to go. With regard to what needs to happen, I'm going to be a little bit, tongue in cheek here again and say everything, right? Because the reality is this elliptic curve cryptography is kind of really baked in at the foundation of these systems, right? So everything depends on it. And so when you remove that foundation and you change its assumptions, you kind of have to rebuild everything. So tangibly, the protocols currently that use elliptic cryptography for authorizations of spending, it's like Bitcoin, Ethereum, most protocols, those have to evolve. Any contract for those blockchains that use smart contracts, any smart contract has to get redeployed with new logic to ensure that, say, admin keys are post-quantum secure. And so that has to happen. And then all user wallets, all value anywhere, has to migrate, because I don't have, like, you don't have my keys, I don't have your keys, Justin Drake doesn't have either of our keys for our Ethereum wallets. Like, that's how it's designed. All of us have to do something, and there has to be a pathway to migrate to that post-quantum world. That, by the way, all of that protocol, smart contract, wallet level stuff has to be secure. It's got to be designed, tested rigorously before we can rely on it.